Hey there, fellow wanderers through history. If you're enjoying this journey into the past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below to share your thoughts. It's always a delight to hear from you. Imagine, if you will, the gentle rhythm of life in a 16th century Indian village, where the air hums with the soft clicks of wooden looms and the faint, earthy scent of saffron threads drying in the sun. These were the weavers' villages, tucked away in the shadows of great cities like Agra and Delhi, where skilled artisans spun tales of silk and cotton into the very fabric of daily existence. In those days, long before the clamor of empires fully defined the land, communities of weavers lived in quiet harmony, their days marked by the steady pull of threads and the warm glow of shared labor. Drawing from the pages of Abul Fazl's Ain-i-Akbari, which offers glimpses into the organized crafts of the time, and corroborated by archaeological reports that unearth fragments of ancient spindles and dye pots, we piece together a serene portrait of this forgotten world, one where the mystery of unrecorded village names adds a whisper of intrigue, like a half-remembered dream. Picture the artisans at dawn, their figures clad in simple cotton dhotis that draped loosely over sun-kissed skin, the fabric cool against the morning chill. These garments, woven from the same looms they tended, spoke of practicality and pride, each fold a testament to their craft. In dusty courtyards framed by mud brick homes, men and women gathered around massive wooden frames, their hands moving with a hypnotic grace. The looms creaked softly, a lullaby of clicks and whirs that blended with the distant calls of village birds, creating a symphony as soothing as a river's flow. The air carried the subtle aroma of natural dyes, saffron for a golden hue, indigo for deep blues mingling with the musty scent of raw silk, freshly unraveled from cocoons. It was a world of textures and tones, where the rough touch of cotton threads contrasted with the silky smoothness that would soon adorn the elite. Yet here, in these humble settings, it was simply the pulse of everyday life. Life in these villages revolved around the community, a web as intricate as the patterns they wove. Families worked side by side, passing down techniques from one generation to the next, their knowledge preserved through oral traditions, and the faint etchings on ancient tools uncovered in archaeological digs. A young apprentice might sit cross-legged beside a master weaver, learning the precise tension needed for silk threads, the air filled with the mentor's soft murmurs, and the faint rustle of fabric taking shape. Meals were communal affairs, shared under the shade of banyan trees, where the scent of freshly baked flatbreads mixed with the lingering sweetness of floral dyes. Evenings brought a gentle wind, carrying whispers of folklore tales of mythical weavers who turned threads into stars, while the stars themselves twinkled above, mirroring the glint of polished shuttles laid to rest for the night. The craft itself was a meditation, demanding patience and precision, as described in the meticulous accounts of a Balfazil, who noted the variety of textiles produced in regions near Agra and Delhi. Weavers transformed humble materials into masterpieces. Cotton dhotis for daily wear, their edges adorned with delicate borders that caught the light like morning dew, and silk saris that flowed like rivers, dyed in colors drawn from the earth. The process began with the selection of fibers, perhaps gathered from local markets where the air buzzed with barter, and the scent of spices wafted through. Threads were spun on simple charkas, the wheel's steady spin accompanied by the soft hum of conversation, a sound as comforting as a heartbeat. Dyeing was an art form unto itself, with pots simmering over low flames, releasing vapors of chamomile and turmeric that filled the air with a warm, herbaceous fragrance. Each step fostered a sense of unity, binding the villagers in a shared purpose that echoed through their days like a gentle tide. Yet amid this tranquility, there lingered a quiet mystery, the unrecorded names of these villages, lost to time like echoes in the wind. Archaeological reports from sites near Agra reveal clusters of weaving settlements, their locations inferred from the abundance of loom weights and spindle whorls buried in the soil. But the specific identities remain elusive. Perhaps these names were never etched into official ledgers, deemed too ordinary for the grand chronicles of the era. Or maybe they faded with the oral histories that weren't preserved. It's a subtle enigma, one that invites contemplation as you imagine the weavers going about their routines, their homes known only by the landmarks of ancient wells and sacred groves. This anonymity adds a layer of poetic depth, reminding us that not all stories need bold proclamations. Some are woven into the very essence of the land, felt rather than named. In the heart of these villages, the rhythm of work extended into the fabric of social life, where festivals marked the seasons with soft celebrations. During the monsoon, when rains pattered gently on thatched roofs, weavers might pause to admire the way water droplets beaded on freshly woven cloth, each drop a prism of color reflecting the vibrant threads. The air grew heavy with the scent of wet earth and blooming jasmine, and families gathered to share stories by lantern light, the flicker casting warm shadows that danced like the patterns on their looms. Children played nearby, their laughter a light melody against the backdrop of adult labor, learning early the value of community and craft. Even in quieter moments, the weaver's world was alive with sensory details, the cool slide of silk through fingers, the faint grit of dust settling on wooden frames, the satisfying thump of a shuttle crossing threads, drawing from historical insights, such as those in the Ain-i-Akbari. We know that these artisans contributed to a broader network of trade, their goods traveling to distant markets. Yet, in their villages, the focus remained inward, on the bonds of kinship and shared expertise. A weaver might spend hours perfecting a design, the loom's vibrations a soothing pulse that lulled the mind into a state of peaceful focus. Much like the steady breath of sleep, the colors they created were not just visual. They evoked emotions, with reds from madder root evoking the warmth of community gatherings, and greens from henna leaves whispering of renewal. Archaeological evidence, like the discovery of dye vats in Delhi's outskirts, paints a picture of innovation, where natural resources were harnessed with ingenuity, turning ordinary villages into hubs of creativity. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden haze over the dusty paths, the weavers would wind down their day, their dhotis slightly frayed from hours of work, but their spirits unbroken. The night air brought a cool breeze, carrying the faint, lingering scent of their labors, silk and cotton, earth and dye, blending into a fragrance that soothed the soul. In these moments, one could almost hear the whispers of the past, the untold stories of villages whose names slipped away like threads in the wind. It's a reminder that true history often lies in the quiet corners, in the hands that shaped the world without seeking acclaim. And as we draw this gentle introduction to a close, let's pause to imagine what lies beyond perhaps deeper explorations of daily rhythms and hidden traditions. But for now, rest easy in the hushed expanse of Fade-e-Pour Sikri's marble halls, where sunlight filtered through latticed windows like whispers of dawn. Emperor Akbar sat upon his throne, draped in robes of shimmering silk that caught the light in waves of crimson and gold. The air was thick with the swirl of sandalwood incense, its sweet smoke curling lazily upward, mingling with the faint rustle of courtiers' breaths and the distant murmur of fountains in the courtyards beyond. Here, in this city of red sandstone dreams, time seemed to slow, as if the very stones held their breath under the weight of imperial decisions. Akbar, the great Mughal sovereign, ruled from 1556 to 1605. His days, a tapestry of governance, woven with threads of wisdom and reform, far removed from the clamor of conquests. His mornings often began in the Diwan-i-Khas, the hall of private audience, where the cool touch of polished marble floors met the warmth of embroidered cushions. Akbar, with his broad frame and thoughtful eyes, would settle into his seat, the silk of his attire whispering against the throne's velvet coverings. The room smelled of fresh jasmine blooms arranged in brass vases, their petals scattering subtle scents that eased the mind amid the day's deliberations. Courtiers approached with scrolls and petitions, their voices low and measured, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the serene equilibrium of the empire. Drawing from the chronicles of Abdul Qadir Badani, a keen observer of the court, we glimpse Akbar's methodical approach to administration, a system built not on brute force, but on the intricate balance of justice and innovation. Akbar's governance was a symphony of order, where each decree flowed like a gentle stream through the vast lands of Mughal India. He established the Mansabdari system, a framework that assigned ranks and responsibilities to officials based on merit and loyalty, ensuring that the empire's machinery hummed with efficiency. In those quiet sessions, as the emperor reviewed reports by lamplight, the flicker of oil lamps casting soft shadows on the walls, one could almost hear the rustle of papers echoing the pulse of a nation. Badoni noted Akbar's insistence on fairness in taxation, with the zabt system standardizing revenue collection across provinces, allowing farmers a respite from arbitrary demands. The air in the hall would grow fragrant with mint tea served in delicate porcelain cups, its steam rising like a veil over conversations about crop yields and trade routes, reminding all present of the earth's bounty under imperial care. Yet, amidst this structured world, Akbar's religious policies shone as a beacon of harmony, a subtle wit in his approach that Badoni captured with understated critique. He promoted sul-i-kul, a doctrine of universal peace, where differences of faith were not barriers, but threads in a greater fabric. In the Ibadat Khana, the house of worship, debates unfolded under arched ceilings that echoed with the soft cadence of scholarly discourse. The scent of rosewater sprinkled on the floors lingered, calming tempers as philosophers from various sects, Muslim, Hindu, Jain, and Christian, gathered to discuss the divine. Akbar, ever the listener, sat with a quiet intensity, his silk sleeves brushing against the marble as he nodded or interjected with a measured word. Badoni, in his Muntakab ut-Tawarik, remarked on how Akbar's edicts forbade forced conversions and encouraged interfaith marriages, fostering an empire where tolerance was not merely policy, but a lived reality. The emperor's wit surfaced in these moments, like a gentle breeze carrying the aroma of spices from the kitchens below. As he quipped about the folly of division, his words wrapping around his audience like the soft folds of his robe. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow through the jolly screens, Akbar turned to matters of justice, ensuring that his courts were havens of equity. In the Diwan-i-Am, the hall of public audience, he heard grievances from afar, the distant calls of peacocks in the gardens providing a soothing backdrop to tales of hardship. Badoni chronicled how Akbar reformed the legal system, drawing from Persian and Indian traditions to create a code that valued evidence over accusation. The emperor's decrees, inscribed on parchment with ink that gleamed like midnight stars, addressed everything from land disputes to trade regulations, each one a brushstroke in the portrait of a prosperous realm. Sensory details abounded. The cool breeze from the Yamuna River wafting through open arches, carrying hints of wet earth and blooming lotuses, or the faint chime of bells from wandering mendicants outside the palace gates. These elements painted a picture of an emperor whose rule was as nurturing as it was firm, his subtle humor emerging in the way he likened corrupt officials to wayward clouds that steal the rain. Throughout his reign, Akbar's administrative genius extended to infrastructure, with roads and canals built to connect the heart of the empire to its fringes. Badoni observed the construction of grand sarais, rest houses along trade routes, where travelers could find shelter and sustenance, their weary steps eased by the emperor's foresight. In Fede-por Sikri, the palaces themselves were a testament to this vision, their walls adorned with intricate carvings that depicted mythical beasts and floral motifs, their surfaces cool to the touch. Even in the heat of day, the emperor would walk these halls at dusk, the air growing heavy with the scent of evening prayers and roasting meats from the royal kitchens, his mind perhaps wandering to the broader tapestry of his rule. Yet here lies the mystery that Badoni hinted at, but never fully unveiled. The unwritten thoughts of Akbar himself. While his public decrees filled scrolls and annals, his private reflections remained shrouded, like shadows in the flickering torchlight. Did he ponder the burdens of absolute power in the quiet of his chambers, where the only sounds were the rustle of wind through the neem trees and the distant hoot of an owl? Badoni, ever the skeptic, suggested that Akbar's soul harbored doubts about his own infallibility, questions that never graced the pages of official records. This enigma, distinct from the clamor of courts or the lives of common folk, adds a layer of intrigue to his legacy, a whisper of vulnerability beneath the silk and stone. As years unfolded, Akbar's influence deepened, his governance evolving like the seasons in the imperial gardens. He established the Dasala system for land revenue, assessing taxes based on a decade's average yield, which Badoni praised for its practicality, even as he critiqued the emperor's growing eclectic spirituality. The halls of Fede-por Sikri echoed with the soft patter of rain on rooftops during monsoons, the air fresh with petrichor. As Akbar's advisors discussed these reforms, their voices blending with the trickle of water in courtyard pools, his wit shone through in edicts that humorously penalized laziness among officials, comparing them to sleeping lions who forget their roar. Sensory richness enveloped these moments, the warmth of sunlight on carved pillars, the taste of sweetmeats shared in breaks, the feel of cool breezes that carried whispers of distant provinces. In his later years, as the empire stabilized, Akbar's focus shifted to cultural patronage, though always tied to governance. Badoni recorded how he supported translations of texts from Sanskrit to Persian, fostering a renaissance of knowledge that illuminated the minds of his subjects. The libraries of the palace, with their shelves of leather-bound volumes, exuded the musty scent of aged paper, inviting quiet contemplation. Here, in the fading light of afternoon, one might imagine Akbar pausing, his silk robes settling around him like a second skin, his thoughts drifting to the mysteries of existence, thoughts that remained his alone, unwritten and elusive. Yet even in prosperity, shadows lingered, as Badoni subtly noted in his chronicles. Famines and administrative challenges tested the empire's resilience. But Akbar's responses were measured, detached from the chaos. He ordered granaries to be stocked and relief distributed, his decrees carrying the calm assurance of experience. The air in the halls grew heavy with the scent of harvested grains, a reminder of the empire's enduring strength. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and indigo, the reign of Akbar drew toward its close. In 1605, the marble halls of Fethepur Sikri, with their incense and whispers, stood as monuments to a rule defined by enlightened governance. And though his personal thoughts remained a mystery, like stars hidden behind clouds, they left an imprint on the empire's soul. From this serene epoch, we turn gently toward the threads that followed, where new stories awaited in the quiet flow of time. In the fading light of a late 16th century evening, the sandstone palaces of Fethepur Sikri stood like silent sentinels against the horizon, their red hues softening into the twilight. Workers in simple tunics, their bodies weary from years of labor, began their final exodus. One by one, they drifted away from the grand arches and courtyards, their footsteps echoing faintly on the warm stone paths. The air carried a whisper of desert winds, carrying grains of sand that brushed against skin like a gentle caress, while the distant call of a peacock faded into the vast emptiness. It was as if the city itself sighed, releasing the weight of its unfulfilled dreams into the night. Fethepur Sikri, once a bustling epicenter of imperial ambition, now felt like a dream half forgotten. Built in the arid plains of northern India, its structures rose from the earth in elegant symmetry, with pillars carved from local sandstone that glowed warmly under the sun. As the workers departed, their tunics coarse and earth-toned swayed with each step, leaving behind the scent of sweat and stone dust that lingered like a faint memory. The courtyards, once alive with the rustle of activity, now echoed only with the soft sigh of wind through crumbling arches. These arches, with their intricate carvings worn smooth by time, curved gracefully overhead, casting long shadows that danced like whispers across the ground. The abandonment was not sudden, but a gradual unraveling, as if the city had outgrown its own foundations. Historical accounts, drawn from meticulous archaeological reports, suggest that the decision came in the 1580, when the imperial court began to withdraw its presence. Abul-Fazl, the chronicler whose writings offer a window into that era, described the place as a paradise on earth. Yet even he hinted at underlying strains in his accounts, preserved through translations of the Akbarnama. He noted the challenges of sustaining such a grand endeavor in a region where water was as elusive as a mirage. The workers, with their tools slung over shoulders, moved like shadows in the dusk, their departure marking the end of an experiment in grandeur. As they left, the sensory tapestry of Fethepur Sikri unfolded in quiet layers. The desert winds, cool and persistent, carried the faint aroma of wild herbs from the surrounding plains, mingling with the dry scent of ancient stone. One could almost hear the subtle creak of wooden beams settling into disuse, or feel the warmth of the sandstone retaining the day's heat. A gentle embrace against the cooling air. The palaces, with their domed roofs and lattice windows, stood in poised elegance, their designs a testament to the artisan's skill. Yet beneath this beauty, cracks had begun to form subtle fissures in the walls that whispered of vulnerability. Not with alarm, but with a resigned calm, theories abound as to why this magnificent city was forsaken, each one weaving through the unknowns like threads in a forgotten tapestry. Archaeological excavations conducted in the 19th and 20th centuries have unearthed evidence of water scarcity as a primary culprit. Reports from sites like the Bayali, the stepwell that once supplied the city, reveal that the groundwater levels were insufficient for a population of thousands. This scarcity would have made daily life untenable, with wells running dry under the relentless sun. Abul Fazl's writings corroborate this, mentioning the scanty rains that plagued the region, leading to a cascade of consequences. The workers' departure, then, was not merely a choice, but a necessity, as the city's lifeblood ebbed away. Yet, water was only one piece of the puzzle. Other theories, pieced together from the same archaeological insights, point to political shifts that rendered Faidehpur Sikri obsolete. The city's location, strategically chosen for its defensibility on a ridge, became a liability as imperial interests shifted toward more fertile and accessible regions. Abul Fazl subtly alludes to this in his chronicles, describing how the court's restlessness mirrored the winds that swept across the plains. Perhaps it was the allure of Lahore or Agra, with their abundant resources, that drew attention away. The unknowns linger here, like the soft play of light on the sandstone facades, inviting speculation without resolution. In the quiet aftermath, the sensory details of abandonment painted a picture of serene decline. The courtyards, once filled with the murmur of voices, now hosted only the occasional rustle of leaves from the few hardy trees that clung to life. The wind, ever present, carried the faint taste of salt from distant evaporating lakes, a reminder of the aridity that had sealed the city's fate. Crumbling arches, their edges softened by erosion, stood as silent witnesses, their shadows lengthening with the setting sun. One might imagine the workers pausing for a final glance, their tunics catching the breeze before vanishing into the haze of the horizon. Historians and archaeologists continue to debate the finer details, drawing from reports that detail the layout of the city, its mosques, palaces, and bazaars, all meticulously planned, yet ultimately abandoned. Excavations have revealed pottery shards and tools left behind, suggesting a hasty but orderly retreat. Abul Fazl's accounts add a layer of poetic reflection, noting the impermanence of human endeavors with a wit that feels almost lullaby-like. What is built by man may be unbuilt by time's gentle hand. This detachment allows us to ponder the consequences without dwelling on the hardships, focusing instead on the elegant symmetry of rise and fall. As the night deepened, the mystery of Fede Porsikri's abandonment took on a dreamlike quality. The stars above, piercing the clear sky, seemed to watch over the empty halls, where the air grew still and cool. Sensory echoes persisted: the soft crunch of sand underfoot, the whisper of fabric against stone, the distant howl of a desert fox, each adding to the enigma. Why, after such investment of effort and vision, was it left to the elements? The theories, while grounded in evidence, leave room for wonder, for the unknown threads that history has yet to unravel. Expanding on these unknowns, one might consider the subtle environmental shifts that archaeological studies have uncovered. Reports from surveys in the 20th century highlight how changing monsoon patterns exacerbated the water crisis, with ancient channels and reservoirs failing to capture enough rainfall. This, combined with Abul Fazl's observations of the region's capricious skies, paints a picture of a city at odds with its surroundings. The workers, in their tunics, embodied this tension, their labor a futile dance against nature's whims. Yet there is a calming poetry in this, as if the city chose to slumber rather than struggle. The sandstone structures, with their weathered surfaces, now invite a gentle exploration of what might have been. The play of moonlight on the carvings creates patterns that shift like thoughts in a half-awake mind, each one a sensory detail that softens the edges of mystery. Perhaps it was not just scarcity or politics, but a deeper alignment with fate, where the city's abandonment became a testament to the ebb and flow of human ambition. In closing, as the winds continue their eternal vigil over Fede Porsikri, one feels a subtle transition to broader tales of history's whispers. The mysteries here, wrapped in the calm of sensory memory, beckon toward new horizons, where other stories await their turn. In the quiet night, in the hushed glow of an Agra evening, the Mughal court unfolded like a dream, woven from threads of gold and whispers of ancient perfumes. Under the watchful eyes of Emperor Jahangir, whose memoirs paint vivid strokes of courtly splendor, the halls of the Red Fort shimmered with an otherworldly grace. Here, amid arches laced with intricate carvings and walls adorned with precious stones, life moved in a gentle rhythm, far removed from the clamor of the world outside. Nobles gathered, their jeweled turbans catching the flicker of oil lamps, as they settled into a realm of opulence that seemed to float on the air itself. The air was alive with the soft scent of rosewater, splashed lightly from silver ewers by attendants whose movements were as fluid as silk. It mingled with the faint, sweet aroma of jasmine blooms arranged in golden bowls, creating a fragrance that wrapped around the senses like a warm embrace. In these gilded halls, every surface gleamed marble floors, polished to a mirror sheen, reflecting the colorful turbans of the courtiers, each one a masterpiece of emeralds and rubies that sparkled like stars under the vaulted ceilings. The nobles reclined on cushions of the finest silk, dyed in hues of crimson and sapphire, their textures soft as a summer breeze against the skin. One could imagine the scene as Jahangir himself described in his memoirs, where the court's daily rituals unfolded with a poetic elegance. A noble, his turban adorned with a single, flawless diamond that caught the light in playful glints, leaned back on his cushion, the fabric whispering against his embroidered robe. Around him, platters of food arrived on trays of beaten gold, bearing fruits from distant orchards, pomegranates bursting with ruby seeds, their juice as sweet as honeyed dreams, and melons chilled with mountain snow, their cool flesh a refreshing contrast to the warm air. The dining was a symphony of tastes, with dishes of saffron-infused rice, tender meats simmered in spices that danced on the tongue, and breads baked fresh, their steam carrying hints of cardamom and nutmeg. Conversations flowed in low, melodic tones, laced with the subtle wit that Jahangir so cherished, as if each word were a pearl added to a string. A courtier might remark on the artistry of a jeweled dagger, its hilt carved with scenes of mythical gardens, eliciting a soft chuckle from his companions. The humor was gentle, like the rustle of leaves in a palace garden, never sharp or biting. Music added to the tranquility, with strings of the sitar plucking notes that drifted like lazy river currents, accompanied by the rhythmic tap of finger cymbals that echoed faintly through the hall. The sound enveloped the diners, blending with the distant trickle of fountains outside, where water splashed into pools lined with mosaic tiles. In this world of abundance, every detail was a testament to the court's lavish heart. The silk cushions, plump and inviting, were embroidered with threads of real gold, their patterns depicting blooming lotuses and peacocks in full display. One might rest a hand on the cool metal of a goblet, etched with floral motifs that seemed to come alive in the candlelight, and sip from a brew of cooled sherbet, infused with petals of roses that left a lingering, floral aftertaste. The courtier's attire was a feast for the eyes. Robes of brocade heavy with pearls, their folds catching the warm hues of sunset filtering through lattice windows, while rings on their fingers glinted with the fire of uncut gems. Jahangir's memoirs recall such evenings with a fond, almost reverent tone, speaking of the court's ability to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. Yet woven into this tapestry of splendor was a quiet mystery, one that added a whisper of intrigue without disturbing the calm. It was said that among the treasures of the court, certain pieces had vanished like shadows at dawn. Ornate chests filled with gem-encrusted daggers and necklaces of ancient pearls, their whereabouts lost to time. No one spoke of it loudly, for the court preferred the serenity of beauty over the weight of puzzles. But the tales lingered in the air like the faint echo of a forgotten song. Perhaps these lost wonders had been spirited away by some unseen hand. Or maybe they rested hidden in secret vaults beneath the fort, waiting for a destined eye to uncover them. Jahangir himself hinted at such enigmas in his writings, describing artifacts that seemed to hold stories of their own. Their absence, a gentle reminder that even in paradise, not all could be grasped. As the night deepened, the courtiers savored the moment, their fingers tracing the edges of silk tapestries that hung like waterfalls of color on the walls. The hall was bathed in the soft light of hanging lanterns, their flames steady and warm, casting long, dancing shadows that played across the faces of those gathered. One could almost feel the cool touch of the night air seeping in from arched doorways, carrying with it the distant scent of night-blooming flowers from the gardens beyond. Here, a servant might offer a bowl of cooled yogurt, sprinkled with pistachios, and a hint of rose essence, its creamy texture a soothing balm after the richer dishes. The opulence extended to every corner, from the ivory inlaid tables holding scrolls of poetry, their pages perfumed with sandalwood, to the carpets underfoot, woven with threads that depicted scenes of mythical hunts and celestial gardens. Jahangir noted in his memoirs the way such details brought a sense of eternal peace, as if the court were a living poem, each element a verse in harmony. Amid this, the mystery of the lost treasures added a subtle layer, like a hidden melody in a symphony, prompting quiet reflections rather than alarm. One courtier, his voice barely above a murmur, might muse on a legendary box of sapphires that had once graced the emperor's table, now vanished without trace, its jewels perhaps slumbering in some undisclosed alcove. In the quiet interludes, when the music paused and the diners paused to breathe, the air filled with the soft rustle of fabrics and the gentle clink of jewelry. The rose water, ever present, was refreshed with a light spray, its mist cooling the skin and clearing the mind. Jahangir's accounts speak of these rituals as essential to the court's soul, a way to honor the fleeting beauty of life. And in those moments, one could sense the wit in the air, as a noble might quip about a particularly radiant gem, comparing it to the stars that were beginning to appear outside, their light a distant echo of the court's own brilliance. As the evening waned, the courtiers lingered, their jeweled turbans now softly illuminated by the moon's glow through the windows. The silk cushions seemed to cradle them in an endless embrace, while the scents of the feast spices and flowers, intertwined, faded into a peaceful haze. Jahangir's memoirs close such chapters with a sense of contentment, reminding that in the Mughal court, life was a gentle flow, rich with sensory wonders and unspoken mysteries. Yet, as the lamps dimmed and the hall grew still, one might feel a quiet pull toward what lay beyond, the promise of new stories waiting in the wings of history. For in the tapestry of time, every golden thread leads to another, And as this scene fades like a dream at dawn, the next chapter whispers of fresh horizons, ready to unfold in the soft hush of dawn, where the first light of the 16th century Mughal countryside seeped through cracks in mud brick walls. The weaver village stirred like a dream, half remembered, nestled amid fields of whispering cotton. This cluster of homes stood humble and enduring, their roofs thatched against the seasonal rains. Here, artisans clad in simple cotton dhotis moved with the rhythm of the earth. Their days woven from threads of routine and quiet labor. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of sun-warmed soil and freshly spun yarn, mingling with the distant call of a peacock echoing through the haze. As the sky blushed with pale gold, the villagers rose, their movements gentle as a river's flow, each step a silent nod to the unyielding cycle of their craft. The artisans, men and women alike, began their day in the dim glow of clay lamps, their dhotis tied neatly around their waists, the fabric soft against their skin from years of wear. In the cool shadows of their mud brick homes, they gathered simple tool spindles carved from local wood, bowls of water to moisten the fibers. The routine unfolded like a lullaby, each action flowing into the next without haste. They sat cross-legged on woven mats, their fingers deftly twisting raw cotton into fine threads, the spindles whirring with a soft, rhythmic hum that blended with the morning birdsong. This was the heart of their world, a dance of hands and materials passed down through generations. As Abul Fazl noted in his meticulous records, where he praised the weaver's skill in producing fabrics that adorned the empire's elite. As the sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow over the village lanes, the air grew thick with dust from the cotton flecks that floated like tiny stars. The artisans paused briefly to share a modest breakfast of roti and lentils, the steam rising in lazy spirals, carrying the comforting aroma of cumin and garlic. Conversations were sparse, murmurs of weather and harvests, laced with a subtle wit that lightened the toil, like joking that their spindles spun faster than the emperor's decrees. Yet beneath this calm, there lingered the mystery of unrecorded work schedules, those invisible threads that bound their days. Abul Fazl's chronicles, while rich in descriptions of imperial workshops, left gaps in the everyday rhythms of rural villages, as if the weavers' lives were whispers lost to time. No ledger captured the exact moments they began or ended their labor. No scribe noted the subtle shifts in pace dictated by the monsoon winds or the harvest moon. It was a quiet enigma, a shadow in the fabric of history, where routines seemed to ebb and flow on their own accord, untouched by the grand narratives of courts and kings. Throughout the morning, the creaking of looms filled the air, a soothing cadence that one might mistake for a distant lullaby. Each loom, a sturdy frame of bamboo and rope, stood in the central room of the homes, where sunlight filtered through latticed windows, dappling the floor with patterns like embroidered silk. The artisans worked in pairs, one feeding the thread while the other pulled the shuttle, their movements synchronized as if guided by an unseen hand. The dusty air settled on their skin, a fine layer that spoke of honest effort, carrying with it the faint, musty scent of aged wood and oiled mechanisms. Here, in these moments, the village pulsed with life, the sensory tapestry weaving together the tactile roughness of the yarn, the visual play of light on the threads, and the auditory whisper of the shuttle's pass. By midday, as the heat pressed down like a gentle blanket, the pace slowed to a contemplative rhythm. The artisans stepped outside to rest under the shade of banyan trees, their dhoties fluttering slightly in the breeze. Children, too young for the looms, played nearby, chasing butterflies or gathering wildflowers, their laughter a soft counterpoint to the village's steady hum. Meals were simple affairs, perhaps a bowl of yogurt mixed with herbs from the nearby fields, the cool tang a welcome relief. Abul Fazl's accounts mentioned how such communities sustained themselves through barter and local trade, their fabrics exchanged for grains or spices. Yet he offered no insight into the precise timing of these breaks, adding to the allure of the unknown. Was it the lengthening shadows that signaled a pause, or the ache in weary muscles? The mystery deepened, a subtle intrigue that made each day feel like a page from an unfinished manuscript. As afternoon waned, the weavers returned to their tasks with renewed focus, the looms resuming their creaking symphony. Threads of various hues dyed with natural extracts from indigo leaves or madder roots were carefully interlaced, creating patterns that echoed the village's harmony with nature. The air grew heavier with the scent of damp earth as occasional rains sprinkled the rooftops, a reminder of the monsoon's rhythm. In these hours, subtle wit emerged in their work, like the way an artisan might hum an old folk tune while correcting a flaw in the weave, turning potential frustration into a moment of quiet amusement. Abul Fazl documented the high quality of Mughal textiles, attributing it to such dedication. But he never delved into the personal cadence of these routines, leaving historians to ponder how these unrecorded schedules shaped the very soul of the craft. Evening brought a gradual unwinding, the sun dipping low and painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. The artisans cleaned their tools with cloth and water, the repetitive motions a soothing ritual that marked the day's end. Families gathered around hearths, where the flicker of flames cast warm shadows, and stories were shared in hushed tones, tales of ancestors who had spun threads under starlit skies. The mystery of their schedules lingered here too, in the way nights blurred into mornings without strict demarcation, as if time itself was woven into the fabric they created. Perhaps, as Abul Fazl implied through his omissions, these routines were not meant for record, a private poetry known only to those who lived it. Yet, even in this serene cycle, there were whispers of the wider world. A traveler might pass through, bringing news of distant markets or imperial demands, But the weavers remained detached, their focus inward. The air cooled, carrying the fresh scent of night-blooming jasmine, and the village settled into repose, the looms silent at last as stars emerged like scattered pearls. One couldn't help but wonder at the enigma Abul Fazl left behind the uncharted flow of their days, a testament to lives lived in quiet resilience. In the fading light, the village prepared for rest, the routines of tomorrow already taking shape in the shadows. This was not the end, but a seamless transition, a thread leading onward to the next weave of stories, where the mysteries of the past continued to unfold in the gentle tapestry of time. In the soft light of a 16th century Mughal village, where clay-roofed homes nestled among fields of whispering cotton, the weavers gathered in open courtyards as the sun dipped low. Here, under skies streaked with fading orange, artisans moved with a rhythm as old as the rivers that fed their dyes, their linen vests fluttering like gentle breaths in the warm air. The world slowed to the steady hum of looms, a lullaby of wood and thread that wove through the evening, inviting one to linger in its calm embrace. These craftsmen, their hands calloused yet graceful, worked with silks that shimmered like moonlight on water. Dressed in simple linen vests dyed a deep earthy brown from walnut husks, they knelt by large clay pots in the courtyard center, where the air carried the faint, tangy scent of fermented indigo leaves. The process began at dawn, when baskets of raw silk arrived from distant markets, threads as fine as whispers waiting to be transformed. One artisan, an elder with a beard streaked in shades of gray, would dip his wooden paddle into the pot, stirring the liquid with deliberate care. Splashes of indigo arced through the air, leaving fleeting blue stains on the ground like scattered stars, while the dye's earthy aroma mingled with the distant fragrance of blooming jasmine hedges. The weaving itself unfolded like a quiet dance, each step guided by techniques passed down through generations, rooted in the archaeological remnants of ancient textile traditions. Excavations from sites like Burhanpur and Agra had revealed fragments of fabrics, their patterns etched with the precision of forgotten masters, speaking of a time when every thread held a story. The artisans used back strap looms, simple yet ingenious devices strapped across their bodies, allowing the warp threads to stretch taut like the strings of a lute. As they sat cross-legged on woven mats, their feet pressing rhythmically on pedals, the shuttle flew back and forth with a soft, repetitive whir, a sound that blended seamlessly with the rustle of leaves overhead. The silk, freshly dyed and glistening, slid through their fingers, cool and slick, its colors deepening under the fading light, vibrant indigos that evoked the depth of night skies, crimsons from madder roots that hinted at sunsets long past. In these courtyards, the art of dyeing was a ritual of patience and precision, drawing from natural sources that the land provided so generously. The artisans crushed leaves and barks, with mortar and pestle, their movements deliberate and unhurried, releasing scents that wove through the air like invisible threads. One might catch the sharp, green tang of fresh indigo fermenting in earthen jars, or the sweet, woody notes of pomegranate rinds boiling in copper cauldrons, their steam rising in lazy spirals. The silk, submerged in these baths, absorbed the colors slowly, emerging transformed, each piece a canvas of subtle hues that spoke of the earth's quiet bounty. Historical records, inferred from textile finds in the ruins of Mughal-era workshops, suggest that these methods were refined over centuries, with artisans adapting tools like wooden blocks for patterning. Though here in the village, the focus remained on the pure essence of the weave. As the day waned, the courtyards filled with the gentle glow of oil lamps, their flames flickering like distant stars, casting long shadows that danced across the drying racks of silk. The artisans paused to inspect their work, running their fingers over the fabric's surface, feeling the slight ridges where threads intersected, a tactile symphony of texture that invited touch. One young apprentice, his vest still crisp and unblemished, watched with wide eyes as his mentor demonstrated the intricate tie-dye technique known as bandhani, where small sections of silk were bound with cotton threads before dyeing. The result was a mosaic of dots and swirls, patterns that mimicked the natural world's gentle chaos, the speckled patterns of monsoon clouds, or the scattered petals of wildflowers. These designs, echoed in archaeological discoveries from sites like Hampi, carried a subtle wit, as if the silk itself whispered secrets of resilience and beauty born from humble origins. Yet amid this serene rhythm, a quiet mystery lingered, like a forgotten melody, half remembered in the wind. The lost dye recipes, those elusive formulas guarded by the ancients, had begun to fade from memory, their secrets buried in the sands of time. Whispers among the artisans spoke of scrolls, long vanished, that once detailed the precise ratios of herbs and minerals, perhaps a pinch of alum for fixing colors, or the exact fermentation days for the deepest indigos. Excavated textile fragments from 16th century sites revealed hues that modern eyes could scarcely replicate, suggesting recipes that blended rare elements like the sap of distant trees or the ashes of specific woods, lost to invasions or the passage of empires. In the courtyard, as the looms hummed their soothing song, one artisan might pause, his gaze distant, pondering the enigma. How had their forebears achieved such vibrancy, such endurance in the dyes? The mystery added a layer of gentle intrigue, a subtle undercurrent to the day's work, reminding all that some knowledge, like the stars above, was meant to be admired rather than fully grasped. The process extended into the night, with the courtyards bathed in the soft luminescence of the moon, its light caressing the drying silks hung on bamboo poles. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint, comforting scent of damp earth and lingering dyes, while the occasional breeze rustled the fabrics like a sigh. Here, the artisans wove not just threads, but stories, each piece a testament to the techniques, honed through trial and error, as evidenced by the preserved fabrics from Mughal archaeological sites. One such find, a silk fragment from a village near Delhi, showcased the interlacing of warp and weft with such finesse that it seemed to breathe, its threads aligned in perfect harmony, a nod to the mathematical precision of the craft. As the hours passed, the sensory tapestry deepened, the cool touch of silk against skin, the rhythmic clack of the loom echoing like a heartbeat, the visual play of colors shifting in the twilight, all wove together into a calming narrative. Subtle wit emerged in the artisan's quiet banter, a murmured joke about a dye that turned unexpectedly green, like the leaves of a mischievous vine, or the way a thread might rebel, knotting itself in playful defiance. These moments, light and fleeting, added a touch of humanity to the scene, grounding the mystery in everyday wonder. Historical accuracy lent weight to their efforts. Findings from textile archaeology, such as those at Fede-Por Sikri, confirmed the use of natural mordants like iron or tannin to set dyes, ensuring the colors withstood the rigors of time and wear. The artisans, drawing from this legacy, experimented with variations, perhaps adding a dash of turmeric for a golden warmth, or boiling oak galls for shades of gray. Each choice a step in an unspoken dialogue with the past. In the quiet hours before dawn, as the first birds stirred with soft calls, the weavers prepared their final pieces. The courtyards, now a realm of peaceful conclusion, the silk, now dry and vibrant, was folded with care, ready for distant markets or local adornment. Yet the mystery of the lost recipes lingered, a gentle enigma that promised more tales to unfold. And so, as the night faded into morning, the hum of the looms softened, transitioning seamlessly to the wider world beyond, where other stories awaited their turn in the light of day. Word count 1,523 in the heart of a sun-dappled Mughal village, where the earth breathed warm beneath ancient banyan trees. The weaver's market unfolded like a gentle whisper of commerce. Here, in the 16th century, men clad in simple dhotis moved with the rhythm of the breeze, their hands calloused from looms that spun dreams into silk. The air carried the faint, inviting scent of cardamom and cumin wafting from nearby stalls, mingling with the soft rustle of fabrics as they changed hands in barter. It was a world of subtle exchanges, where the day's light painted everything in hues of amber and gold, inviting one to linger in its peaceful hum. The weavers, sturdy figures with turbans tied loosely against the heat, gathered in the bazaar's open square, their voices rising in a cadence as soft as a lullaby. One might see old Karim, his dhoti fluttering like a flag of faded indigo, holding up a bolt of fine silk, its threads gleaming like captured moonlight for your daughter's wedding veil. He murmured to a neighboring farmer, his words laced with a quiet wit that hinted at shared secrets. The farmer, in turn, offered baskets of ripe mangoes, their sweet, sticky aroma blending with the earthy spice of the air. Such trades were not hurried. They unfolded slowly, like the unfolding of a flower at dawn, each barter a dance of mutual need and respect. Bernier's travels, though penned in a later era, echoed these scenes with a traveler's keen eye. He spoke of the Mughal markets as places where goods flowed like rivers, unseen and unmeasured by the empire's grand ledgers. In this village, the silk from the weaver's looms, dyed in shades of crimson and sapphire, traveled far beyond the bazaar's edges, bartered for grains or spices that sustained families through the monsoons. A young weaver named Rajiv, his fingers stained with dye, would haggle playfully over a length of cloth, his laughter a soft ripple in the crowd. This silk has seen the moon's reflection in the river, he might say with a sly smile, evoking the silk's journey from cocoon to market, while the listener imagined the cool touch of the fabric against skin, smooth as a summer breeze. Around them, the bazaar buzzed with life, yet in a tone so soothing it felt like a bedtime tale. Stalls lined with earthen pots released whispers of baked clay and fresh turmeric, their scents weaving through the air like invisible threads. The cloth rustled gently as buyers examined it, the sound akin to leaves in a light wind, accompanied by the distant call of a peacock echoing from the village outskirts. Women in colorful saris moved gracefully, their anklets chiming like soft music as they inspected the weaver's wares. One might barter a handful of dates for a scarf, the sticky sweetness of the fruit lingering on the tongue, a reminder of the desert caravans that brought such delicacies to these parts. Yet beneath this serene surface lay a mystery that Bernier himself noted in his writings, the enigma of unrecorded trade logs. In the shadows of the bazaar, away from the eyes of imperial scribes, certain exchanges slipped into obscurity, like secrets whispered to the wind. Perhaps it was the silk smuggled in under the cover of night, its origins lost to tales of distant silk routes that Bernier described as labyrinthine paths through the mountains. Or maybe it was the quiet agreements between weavers and merchants, where a nod and a smile sealed deals that never touched parchment. These unlogged trades, Bernier observed, formed the unseen backbone of village life, evading the Mughal administration's grasp and adding a layer of intrigue to the daily rhythm. One could imagine an old ledger, its pages blank where entries should be, hidden in a weaver's hut, its absence a puzzle that hinted at fortunes made and lost in the quiet hours. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow over the market, the weavers continued their work with a patience that felt eternal. A group of them sat cross-legged on woven mats, their dhotis tucked neatly, threading needles with silk that shimmered like dew-kissed webs. The air grew warmer, carrying the faint bitterness of brewing chai from a nearby stall, its steam rising in lazy spirals that danced with the scents of ginger and clove. Buyers from afar, perhaps travelers like Bernier, would arrive with stories of other lands, bartering tales for textiles, their voices blending into the market symphony. This cloth, one might say, running a hand over the fabric, holds the memory of 100 hands that touched it, evoking the sensory delight of its texture, cool and slippery against the palm. In Bernier's accounts, such markets thrived on ingenuity, with weavers adapting designs from Persian influences or local motifs, creating pieces that told stories of cultural fusion. Here, a dhoti-clad artisan might craft a silk shawl embroidered with motifs of blooming lotuses, its patterns inspired by the riverside fields where water lilies floated lazily. The barter for such a piece could involve an exchange of salt blocks from the distant coasts, their sharp, mineral tang cutting through the sweeter aromas, reminding all of the vast networks that connected these villages to the world beyond. The mystery deepened in these transactions. Bernier noted how some weavers kept personal tokens, perhaps a carved wooden seal or a hidden pouch of coins, as markers of deals that official records ignored, leaving historians to wonder at the gaps in the empire's economic tapestry. The day's light softened as afternoon approached, and the market took on a dreamlike quality. Children darted between stalls, their laughter light as feathers, while elders shared tales of past trades under the shade of palm fronds. The silk, with its subtle sheen, caught the light in ways that made it seem alive, rustling faintly as it was draped and examined. One weaver, wise and weathered, might recount how his grandfather bartered for spices that arrived on camelback, their pungent aroma cinnamon and nutmeg lingering long after the deal was done. A sensory echo of journeys unlogged. Bernier's writings captured this essence, describing how such markets operated on trust rather than tallies. Their prosperity, a quiet rebellion against the court's formalities. As shadows lengthened, the weavers paused to share a simple meal, the scent of freshly baked roti mingling with the ever-present spices. The mystery of the unrecorded logs persisted, a gentle enigma that wove through their conversations like a hidden thread. Perhaps, as Bernier suggested, these omissions protected the weavers from taxes or scrutiny, allowing their craft to flourish in anonymity. The silk, bartered and bound for unknown destinations, carried with it the village secrets, each fold a potential clue to trades that time had erased. In the cooling evening air, with the first stars blinking awake, the market began to wind down. The weavers gathered their bolts, their dhotis now dusted with the day's earth, and exchanged final words with a wit as subtle as the fading light. May your silk find paths as winding as the rivers, one might say, a playful nod to the mysteries that lay beyond. As the bazaar quieted, the sense of the day lingered, a soothing blanket of memories, leading gently toward what tomorrow might bring. And so, The cycle continued, a lullaby of trade echoing into the night, hinting at segments yet to unfold. Word count 1,500 in the soft glow of twilight, where the plains of Hindustan stretched like a vast, embroidered tapestry. The weaver villages of the 16th century hummed with a quiet rhythm all their own, here in clusters of mud-walled homes nestled among fields of cotton. Women moved through their days with the grace of threads being spun, dressed in simple cotton saris, dyed in earthy hues of ochre and indigo. They gathered by the hearths, their fingers dancing over spindles. As the world outside faded into shadows, the air carried the faint, comforting scent of wood smoke and fresh spun yarn. A lull that whispered of lives woven from unseen hands and forgotten stories. These women, often unnamed in the grand chronicles, held the threads of their communities together, their work a silent symphony in the empire's vast loom. As Abul-Fazl noted in his meticulous accounts, the women of these villages were the unseen architects of cloth, their skills essential to the empire's trade and daily life. He described how, in the reign of Akbar, the finest cottons from Gujarat and Bengal flowed through such places, transformed by deft hands into garments that adorned both the humble and the highborn. Yet it was the women's domain by the hearth that Abul-Fazl touched upon with subtle admiration, where the spindle's gentle hum mingled with the crackle of flames, creating a melody that soothed the soul even as it sustained the body. Imagine, if you will, a woman named Mira, though such names were rarely recorded, sitting cross-legged on a woven mat, her sari draped modestly over her shoulders. The firelight flickered across her face, casting warm shadows that danced like fireflies in the dim hut. Her spindle, a simple wooden tool polished smooth by years of use, twirled between her fingers, drawing out fine threads from a bundle of cotton fluff. The process was one of patient repetition, each twist and pull a meditation that echoed the turning of seasons. The air grew thick with the earthy aroma of the cotton balls, freshly picked and fluffed, their fibers whispering against her skin like a lover's breath. Nearby, other women joined in, their voices murmuring in low, rhythmic cadences, sharing tales of harvests past as the spindles whirred in harmony. In these moments, the hearth became a sanctuary, a circle of light amid the encroaching night. The flames cast a golden hue on their saris, the fabric's subtle weave catching the light in patterns that spoke of generations of knowledge. Abul-Fazl, in his Ain-i-Akbari, marveled at how such women produced threads finer than a spider's web, their work supporting the empire's renowned textile trade. He wrote of the cotton fields yielding bountifully under Akbar's reforms, but it was the women's unerring hands that turned raw fiber into the soft saris they wore, each one a testament to their quiet ingenuity. As the spindle hummed, a low, soothing drone that seemed to vibrate through the earth itself, one could almost feel the warmth of the fire seeping into the bones, easing the day's labors into peaceful repose. Yet, beneath this serene facade lay a mystery that Abul-Fazl himself only hinted at: the unrecorded crafts of these women, techniques passed down like secret heirlooms, never fully captured in the annals of history. While the great chronicler documented the looms and the markets, he left gaps where the women's innovations lingered in the shadows. Perhaps it was in the way they blended dyes from local herbs, creating shades that mimicked the monsoon sky's subtle grays, or in the intricate knots they tied to strengthen threads against the wear of time. These methods, whispered from mother to daughter in the hush of evening, vanished into the ether, leaving behind only the fabrics themselves as faint clues. One might ponder, in the firelight's glow, how such knowledge eluded the scribes, lost to the winds that carried the empire's stories elsewhere. As the night deepened, the women's work continued, their movements fluid and unhurried. The hearth's warmth enveloped them, the scent of roasting grains mingling with the cotton's fresh, clean tang. A subtle wit often laced their conversations, a light-hearted tease about a spindle that spun too eagerly, or a thread that knotted itself in playful rebellion, bringing a soft chuckle that broke the stillness without disturbing the calm. Abul-Fazl observed that in these villages, the women's roles extended beyond mere labor. They were the guardians of domestic economy, their spinning ensuring that every household had cloth for clothing and trade. He recounted how, during times of abundance, their skills allowed villages to thrive, with surplus threads exchanged for spices or grains, fostering a quiet prosperity that rippled through the empire. The sensory world of these women was rich and enveloping, a tapestry of touch, sound, and scent that Abul-Fazl evoked in his writings. The cool slide of cotton fibers through calloused fingers, the steady rhythm of the spindles spin like a distant heartbeat, the faint crackle of embers that painted the air with a smoky haze, all wove together into a lullaby of daily life. One could almost hear the soft rustle of saris as they adjusted their positions, the fabric brushing against the mat with a whisper like leaves in a gentle breeze. In the background, the occasional call of a night bird outside added a natural counterpoint, reminding all that the village was part of a larger, harmonious world. But even in this idyll, shadows of uncertainty lingered, as Abul-Fazl subtly noted in his accounts of rural life. The women's crafts, while vital, were vulnerable to the whims of nature and empire. A poor harvest might mean scant cotton, leaving spindles idle and hearths dimmer than usual. Yet these challenges were met with a detached resilience, the women adapting their techniques without fanfare, their focus on the steady pull of thread rather than the storms beyond. It was in these adaptations that the mystery deepened innovations like reinforcing threads with natural resins from nearby trees, a method that made fabrics more durable against the monsoons, yet one that slipped through the historical record like water through fingers. As the hours waned, the women paused to rest, their spindles set aside on low wooden stools. The firelight softened, casting a golden veil over the room, and the air grew heavy with the mingled scents of smoke and spun cotton. Abul Fazl praised such moments in his chronicles, describing how the women's labor not only clothed the empire, but also wove the social fabric, binding families and communities in shared endeavor. Here, in the quiet of the hearth, one could sense the subtle wit in their survival, a knowing smile at how their unrecorded arts outlasted emperors and scribes alike. Through the night, the mystery of these crafts persisted, a gentle enigma that invited reflection. What patterns had they created, lost to time? Perhaps a weave that captured the essence of a starlit sky, or dyes that held the fragrance of wildflowers long after the cloth was worn. Abul Fazl's words hinted at such possibilities, urging readers to appreciate the unseen contributions that sustained the empire's splendor. As dawn approached, the first light filtering through the thatched roofs, the women rose once more, their saris stirring with the promise of a new day. The spindle's hum resumed, a soothing refrain that carried the village forward. And in this cycle, one might glimpse a transition to broader tales, where the threads of individual lives intertwined with the grander weave of history, waiting to be explored in whispers yet to come. Word count 1,500. In the fading light of a 16th century Mughal evening, the weaver villages nestled along the riverbanks stirred with a quiet rhythm, where threads of faith wove through the air as seamlessly as silk through a loom. Here, in clusters of mud brick homes shaded by date palms, artisans paused from their labors to turn toward the divine, their simple tunics dusted with the day's fibers and earth. These men and women, bearers of ancient crafts, gathered in modest mosques or temples built from sun-baked clay, their prayers rising like whispers carried on the breeze. Drawing from the chronicles of Badani, who noted the devout ways of such communities, we glimpse a world where spirituality softened the edges of daily toil, enfolding souls in a gentle embrace of ritual and mystery. The artisans moved with a graceful hush, their bare feet padding across cool, packed earth floors worn smooth by generations. In the mosque's dim interior, a few oil lamps flickered, casting warm glows that danced across arched walls adorned with simple geometric patterns, echoes of the designs they etched into their fabrics. Men in loose cotton tunics, their sleeves rolled from hours at the loom, knelt in rows, heads bowed as soft chants filled the space. The air carried the faint, sweet scent of incense, sandalwood wisps curling upward, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp bricks, and the subtle tang of river mist drifting in from outside. Badoni, in his observations, remarked on how these prayers often began at dusk, a time when the call to worship blended with the rustle of leaves, creating a symphony that soothed the spirit like a lullaby sung to a restless child. Women, too, participated in these gatherings, though often in separate corners or adjacent courtyards, their voices a murmur of devotion that wove through the chants like complementary threads. They wore tunics of hand-woven cotton, dyed in hues of indigo and saffron, colors that spoke of their craft and their faith. As they pressed palms together in prayer, the soft fabric brushed against their skin, a tactile reminder of the divine in the mundane. The chants themselves were melodic, repetitive phrases from the Quran or ancient verses, their cadence slow and rhythmic, like the steady clack of a loom in the distance. One could almost feel the vibration in the air, a gentle hum that settled over the assembly, easing the burdens of the day with its hypnotic flow. Yet, amid this serenity, there lingered an air of enigma, the mystery of unwritten rituals that Badoni hinted at in his writings. These were practices passed down not through scrolls or edicts from the imperial court, but through whispered traditions and subtle gestures, known only to the elders of the village. Perhaps it was the way a weaver might trace an unseen pattern in the air before beginning prayers, a motion that mimicked the intricate knots of their textiles, symbolizing a connection to forces beyond the visible world. Or the faint scent of herbs burned in secret corners, their aromatic smoke jasmine laced with myrrh rising to invoke blessings for the looms and the families they sustained. Badoni, ever the keen observer, noted such customs without fully unraveling them, leaving a veil of intrigue that added depth to the villagers' devotion. In these mud brick sanctuaries, the artisans found solace, their prayers a counterpoint to the world's harsher edges. The temple altars, simple affairs of stone and clay, held offerings of fresh flowers and grains, their petals releasing a delicate fragrance that mingled with the incense. As the faithful bowed, the cool stone beneath their knees grounded them, while the warm air carried the distant sound of a flute from a neighboring hut, its notes weaving into the chants like an unplanned harmony. Badoni recorded how such gatherings fostered a sense of unity, where the act of prayer became a shared breath, a collective sigh that bound the community in invisible threads. One might imagine the scene at dawn, when the first light filtered through lattice windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like fireflies in the haze. The artisans arrived early, their tunics still carrying the night's chill, and as they settled into position, the soft rustle of fabric against fabric created a whispery backdrop to the recitations. The chants grew in intensity, yet remained gentle, each word pronounced with a precision that evoked the careful threading of a warp and weft. Sensory details abounded. The faint taste of mint, leaves chewed during pauses, a ritual Badoni mentioned as a way to purify the breath before addressing the divine. The subtle warmth of bodies pressed close in prayer, a comforting press against the cool air, and the visual tapestry of shadows playing on the walls, where flickering lamps cast patterns reminiscent of the motifs they wove into cloth. These rituals, while rooted in the everyday, held layers of meaning that that eluded easy explanation. The mystery deepened in the unwritten aspects, such as the silent meditations where artisans visualized sacred geometries, patterns that guided their looms by day and their souls by night. Badoni alluded to these in his accounts, suggesting they drew from pre-Mughal traditions, perhaps inherited from Sufi wanderers or local saints, whose stories were told in hushed tones around evening fires. No scribe had captured them fully, leaving them as elusive as the wind that rustled the palm fronds overhead, a subtle wit in their resistance to documentation, as if the divine preferred secrecy to preserve its essence. As the prayers concluded, the artisans rose slowly, their movements deliberate and unhurried, like the gradual unfurling of a bolt of fabric. They stepped into the evening air, where the scent of blooming night, flowers, jasmine, and champa mingled with the lingering incense, creating a perfume that lingered on their skin. Badoni observed how these moments of devotion left a lasting peace, a calm that carried them back to their homes and hearths, where the mysteries of their faith continued to unfold in private reflections. In this way, the religious life of the weaver villages stood apart, a serene island in the vast Mughal tapestry, untouched by the court's grandeur or the village's daily grind. To expand upon these scenes, consider the tactile world of their worship. The smooth feel of prayer beads made from local wood, each bead worn from years of use, carrying the faint oiliness of hands that had toiled at looms. Or the auditory layering, where the chants overlapped with the distant call of a nightingale, its song a natural echo of the human voices, as if nature itself joined in the ritual. Badoni's records offer glimpses of similar sensory richness, such as the use of rose water sprinkled during festivals, its cool droplets evoking renewal and purity, a tradition that added a refreshing note to the air. In one historical instance, drawn from Badoni's notes, the artisans observed a seasonal rite where they offered newly woven cloths to the mosque, their fabrics dyed with natural pigments that released earthy scents, turmeric's warm spice, indigo's sharp bitterness, infusing the space with a multisensory tribute. This practice, unwritten yet enduring, hinted at a deeper mystery, the idea that their art and faith were intertwined in ways that transcended words, a subtle dance of creation and spirituality that Badoni could only allude to. As the night deepened, the villagers dispersed, their hearts lighter, carrying the echoes of chants into their dreams. Yet, in the quiet that followed, one sensed the continuity of these mysteries, waiting to be rediscovered, a gentle thread leading toward the broader stories of the land. And so, from this peaceful corner of devotion, we turn our gaze onward to the paths that weave through time. In the hushed glow of a 16th century Mughal dawn, the weaver villages stirred like threads awakening in a vast loom, where young lives wove themselves into the fabric of time. Here, amidst the terracotta hues of clay homes and the whisper of ancient rivers, children moved with the quiet rhythm of their world, their small forms draped in dhotis of simple cotton that brushed against sun-warmed earth. These boys, often no taller than the spinning wheels they tended, carried the legacy of their fathers in every tentative pull of a shuttle. Their days a gentle tapestry of labor and fleeting joys. The air carried the soft scent of dyed yarns, a blend of earthy indigo and warm turmeric that lingered like a mother's lullaby. Little hands, calloused yet nimble, reached for the threads that gleamed under the filtered light of thatched roofs, their fingers tracing patterns as old as the Indus Valley itself. Archaeological whispers from sites like Harappa, unearthed in later centuries, hint at such tools, simple wooden frames and bone shuttles, that these children might have handled with a mix of wonder and weariness. In the cool shade of open courtyards, a boy of perhaps 7 years would sit cross-legged, his dhoti pooling around him like ripples in a pond, guiding a warp through the loom with movements as precise as a bird's flight. The threads felt smooth and yielding under his touch, a silent companion in the day's quiet hum, while dust from the beaten paths outside danced in stray sunbeams, settling on his skin like fine powder. Yet beyond the looms, there were moments of pause, when the sun hung high and the heat softened the edges of routine. The children, their dhotis tied high to avoid the tangle of tools, would steal glances at the world beyond, where archaeological finds suggest hidden layers of play. Unearthed toys from Mughal-era sites, clay marbles, and rudimentary dolls speak of games unrecorded in the grand chronicles, mysteries that float like unseen threads in the air. One might imagine a group of boys, their laughter muffled by the village's serene rhythm, inventing contests with scraps of fabric or pebbles from the riverbank. Perhaps they raced loom shuttles across the ground, the smooth wood gliding over packed dirt with a whisper, or balanced sticks to mimic the swaying of date palms. These games, lost to history's selective gaze, carried a subtle wit, a clever twist in their rules that turned everyday objects into treasures. A boy might chuckle softly as his pebble skipped farther than his friends, the dust rising in gentle clouds that tickled their noses with the scent of sun-baked soil. As the afternoon light filtered through the leaves, the children returned to their tasks, their small dhotis now dusted with the fine particles of wool and silk. The looms creaked with a rhythmic cadence, like a distant heartbeat, and the threads soft as whispered secrets slipped through their fingers with a satisfying glide. Historical accounts, drawn from the faint echoes of Mughal artifacts, reveal how these young weavers learned the craft early, their eyes trained on the intricate designs that would one day adorn imperial courts. A child might pause to admire the way sunlight caught the warp, turning ordinary fibers into a kaleidoscope of colors crimson like ripening pomegranates, azure like the sky at dusk. The air was alive with the faint rustle of fabric taking shape, a sensory symphony that enveloped them, From the cool press of the loom's frame against their legs, to the warm breeze carrying hints of cardamom from nearby kitchens. In these villages, the mystery of unrecorded games wove through the children's lives like an unseen pattern. Archaeological digs at places such as Fay de Porsikri have yielded curious items, small, carved stones, and fragments of what could be game boards, suggesting playful rituals that evaded the pens of historians. Perhaps in the golden hours before sunset, the boys gathered under the shade of a banyan tree, its leaves murmuring secrets overhead. They might have devised challenges with the very tools of their trade, turning a bundle of threads into a makeshift ball, or using shuttles to build ephemeral structures in the dirt. These inventions carried a gentle humor, a witty nod to their laborious days, where a well-aimed throw could turn a simple game into a momentary triumph. The dust paths, soft underfoot, would carry the faint impressions of their feet, a subtle record of joys that history overlooked, much like the way a breeze erases footprints in sand. Even in quieter moments, the children found solace in the natural world around them. The river nearby, its waters murmuring over smooth stones, offered a respite where they could dip their toes, feeling the cool caress against their skin, a contrast to the warm threads they handled all day. Sensory memories lingered, the earthy taste of well water drawn from clay pots, the distant call of peacocks echoing through the fields, and the soft weight of a dhoti against their legs as they rested. Historical examples from Mughal-era findings, like the detailed miniatures in Akbar's ateliers, depict similar scenes, though they often gloss over the children's world. Here, a boy might lie back, gazing at clouds that drifted like unspooled yarn, imagining games born of pure fancy, their rules as fluid as the wind. As evening approached, the looms fell silent, and the children, their dhotis now shadows in the dimming light, retreated to simple meals of roti and lentils, the flavors warm and comforting on their tongues. The mystery of those unrecorded games lingered, a gentle enigma wrapped in the fading day, where archaeological hints teased at stories never fully told. Perhaps in the firelight, they shared tales of their secret contests, their voices low and rhythmic, carrying a subtle wit that turned hardship into whimsy. The soft threads of their lives, touched by the dust of paths and the glow of stars, wove a narrative of resilience, one that archaeological treasures continue to unravel. Yet not all days ended in ease. The era's challenges, like fleeting scarcities or distant conflicts, touched even the young, though with a detached grace that softened the edges. Historical records, inferred from artifact patterns, suggest that such times brought a quiet fortitude, where children adapted their games to the rhythm of survival, turning scarcity into creativity. A boy might fashion a toy from a discarded thread, its soft loops spinning tales of endurance, the air carrying the faint, woody scent of the loom room as a reminder of their world. Through it all, the children's existence remained a lullaby of continuity. Their small dodies, a symbol of an enduring craft, the sensory tapestry of their days, the glide of threads, the warmth of sun-dappled paths, the whisper of unrecorded mysteries, painted a picture of a world both grounded and ethereal. As the night sky unfolded its velvet canopy, dotted with stars like scattered sequins, one might wonder at the games yet to be discovered, waiting in the silence of history's weave. And so, as the village settled into slumber, the threads of these young lives intertwined with the greater story, leading gently toward what comes next. In the soft glow of a 16th century Mughal village, where the sun dipped low over terraced fields, and the air carried whispers of jasmine and earth, weavers gathered at their stations. These artisans, clad in simple cotton vests dyed the color of river stones, moved with a rhythm as old as the threads they worked. Their world was one of quiet industry, where wooden looms stood like ancient guardians, their frames etched with the patina of generations. Here, amid the hum of daily life, the tools of weaving held secrets, each piece a testament to craftsmanship that had endured through empires and seasons. The looms themselves were marvels of humble ingenuity, constructed from sturdy teak and acacia wood, sourced from the forests that fringed the villages along the Yamuna River. A typical loom, often called a kadhai, spanned about 6 feet in width, its beams hewn to a smooth finish that spoke of careful sanding and oiling. The weaver sat cross-legged on a low stool, his vest clinging gently to his skin as he leaned forward, fingers dancing over the warp threads. These threads, stretched taut across the loom's frame, created a canvas of potential, ready for the shuttle's journey. The shuttle, a slender piece of carved rosewood no longer than a man's hand, glided back and forth with a rhythmic clack that echoed like distant rain on leaves. Each pass wove color into form, the wood's dusty surface releasing a faint, earthy scent that mingled with the weaver's steady breath. Beside the loom, an array of ancillary tools lay arranged with meticulous care, their forms worn from years of use. The heddle, a simple rod of bamboo strung with cords, lifted and lowered the warp threads in alternation, allowing the weft to interlace without tangle. Its mechanism, operated by a foot pedal made from hardened oak, produced a soft, repetitive thud that blended into the village's ambient symphony. One could almost feel the cool grain of the wood underfoot, its surface polished by the pressure of countless steps. Nearby, spindles twirled on their stands, slim cylinders of ironwood tipped with bone, spinning fine cotton fibers into yarn. The weaver would pause to wind the yarn onto bobbins, his movements deliberate and unhurried, as if coaxing a story from the fibers themselves. In these tools, there was a subtle elegance, a wit in their design that belied their rustic appearance. The beaters, flat bars of seasoned mango wood, swung gently to press the weft into place, their weight perfectly balanced so as not to jar the weaver's arm. A light tap, and the fabric grew, each thread locking into its neighbor with a satisfying click that resembled the soft closing of an ancient book. The air around the loom carried the warm, musty aroma of aged wood and freshly oiled mechanisms, a scent that evoked memories of monsoon rains and drying herbs. Sensory details like these enveloped the space, turning labor into a meditative art where the weaver's cotton vest, light and breathable against the humid air, became part of the toolset itself. Historical records from the Ain-i-Akbari, the detailed administrative manual of Emperor Akbar's court, offer glimpses into these implements, noting their prevalence in villages from Agra to Lahore. The text describes how weavers in the Mughal-era relied on locally sourced materials, adapting tools to the available resources with a practicality that was both ingenious and enduring. For instance, the use of wooden pegs and levers allowed for adjustable tension on the loom, a feature that prevented breakage during the weaving of intricate patterns. Yet, amid this documented precision, there lingers a mystery, the enigma of lost tool designs that once elevated Mughal textiles to unparalleled splendor. Whispers among the elders spoke of designs that vanished like mist at dawn, tools whose blueprints were guarded in secret scrolls or etched into forgotten temple walls. One such mystery involved the shadow shuttles, rumored contraptions of ebony and ivory that could weave patterns invisible to the eye until the fabric caught the light. Just so, textile records from Persian travelers, such as those in the Baburnama, hint at these innovations, describing weavers who produced fabrics with threads so fine they seemed to shimmer with hidden motifs. But the designs, perhaps carried away by invading armies or lost in the fires of rebellion, left only fragments in the collective memory. A weaver might pause, his hand on the dusty loom, and wonder at the gaps in knowledge, the subtle wit of history that conceals as much as it reveals. As the day waned, the weaver's tools took on a golden hue under the setting sun, their surfaces glowing with the warmth of well-used wood. The comb, a series of teeth carved from deer antler, glided through the warp to align the threads, its gentle scrape a soothing counterpoint to the shuttle's clack. Each tool was not merely functional, but a companion, its form shaped by the hands that wielded it. In the cotton vest of the artisan, one could see the practical adaptation to the climate. The fabric, woven on these very looms, allowing for ease of movement in the stifling heat. The vest's loose weave permitted a whisper of breeze, carrying with it the faint scent of the river and the distant call of birds settling for the night. Expanding on historical examples, accounts from the Tuzuk-i-Jahangiri, Emperor Jahangir's memoirs, detail how royal workshops employed similar tools on a grander scale. Yet the village weavers maintained their own traditions. A particular spindle design, with its notched end for even winding, was noted for its efficiency in producing the fine muslins that dazzled European traders. The mystery deepened with tales of tools that incorporated metal reinforcements, perhaps brass or copper, to withstand the strain of denser fabrics, only to disappear from records after the 17th century. Why these innovations faded remains a puzzle, a subtle enigma wrapped in the folds of time, where the clacking of shuttles once echoed through the nights. In the quiet hours, as stars began to prick the sky, the weaver might reflect on the sensory world of his craft, the feel of the loom's frame, cool and solid under his palms, the soft rustle of threads as they intertwined, and the faint, woody taste in the air from years of oil and dust. These elements created a lullaby of labor, a calming cadence that soothed the mind even as it demanded focus. Subtle wit emerged in the tool's imperfections, like a slightly warped beater that still served faithfully, reminding the weaver that perfection lay in persistence rather than flawlessness. Yet the mystery of the lost designs persisted, a gentle undercurrent to the daily rhythm. Some believed that the knowledge had been deliberately obscured, perhaps to protect trade secrets from rival courts, or lost in the chaos of migrations as villages shifted with the empire's expansions. Historical textile records, such as those preserved in the British Museum's collections of Mughal artifacts, show fragments of looms with unfamiliar attachments, suggesting tools that could produce bidirectional weaves or self-correcting mechanisms. These hints fuel the intrigue, a detached curiosity that invites contemplation rather than alarm. As evening deepened, the weaver set aside his tools, their forms silhouetted against the fading light. The cotton vest, now dusted with lint and wood particles, hung loosely, a testament to the day's endeavors. In this moment, the narrative of weaving tools extended beyond the physical, touching on the intangible threads of history and mystery. And so, as the village settled into the embrace of night, one might glance toward the horizon, where the next tale awaited, perhaps in the hands of another artisan, or the pages of a forgotten scroll. In the gentle hush of a 16th century Mughal weaver village, nestled amid the fertile plains, where the Yamuna River whispered secrets to the earth, life unfolded like the threads of a finely spun tapestry. Here, under the vast indigo sky, artisans clad in simple dhotis moved with the rhythm of the seasons, their days woven together by invisible bonds of kinship and shared purpose. These men, with calloused hands and quiet resolve, gathered in sun-dappled courtyards, where the air carried the faint scent of damp soil and blooming jasmine, a world away from the clamor of distant courts and markets. Drawing from the chronicles of Abul Fazl, who documented the empire's social fabric in his Ain-i Akbari, we glimpse a community sustained not by edicts or commerce, but by the subtle warmth of mutual reliance, a melody of daily rituals that soothed the soul even in times of scarcity. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the weavers rose, their dhotis fluttering like pale ghosts in the cool breeze. They were men of the loom, descendants of generations who had mastered the art of transforming raw cotton and silk into garments fit for emperors. Though their own lives remained humble, Abul-Fazl noted the meticulous organization of such villages, where skilled hands worked in harmony, each artisan contributing to a collective effort that echoed the empire's emphasis on unity under Akbar's rule. In the courtyard, a central space shaded by ancient banyan trees, they assembled for the morning meal, their movements deliberate and unhurried. The earthen stoves glowed softly, flames licking at iron griddles where chapatis sizzled with a comforting hiss, the dough bubbling and releasing an aroma of roasted wheat that mingled with the earthy tang of mustard oil. One weaver, his face lined with the wisdom of years, would flip the breads with a wooden spatula, the soft crackle drawing forth murmurs of anticipation from his companions. Laughter, light as a feather drifting on the wind, wove through the air as they sat cross-legged on woven mats, their dhotis pooling around them like folds of river water. It was a sound born of familiarity, a subtle wit that surfaced in shared jests about a loom's stubborn thread, or the way the monsoon rains turned paths to mud. Ah, brother, one might say with a wry smile, your knots are as tricky as a courtier's promises, eliciting a chorus of chuckles that faded into contented sighs. The meal was simple yet profound, a ritual that Abul-Fazl described as integral to the village social order, where food served as the glue of community. They passed around clay bowls of lentil stew, the steam rising in lazy spirals, carrying hints of cumin and garlic that warmed the senses. Each bite of the soft, flaky chapati, still warm from the griddle, evoked a quiet pleasure, its texture yielding under teeth while the flavors lingered on the tongue, a reminder of the earth's bounty and their shared labor. In these gatherings, the weavers' bonds revealed themselves not in grand declarations, but in the unspoken exchanges that Abul-Fazl subtly alluded to in his accounts of rural life. He spoke of the empire's villages as self-sustaining entities, where mutual aid formed the backbone of existence. Yet there lingered a mystery in these unwritten alliances, alliances that bound them like the invisible weft in a loom's warp. Perhaps it was the way one artisan would lend his tools to another without a word, or how they collectively tended to a neighbor's field during illness, their actions guided by an ancient code, etched not in ink, but in the heart. This enigma, untouched by official records, hinted at a deeper current flowing beneath the surface of daily life, a current that Abul-Fazl only grazed in his descriptions of Akbar's administrative reforms. It was as if the village breathed a secret language, where a nod or a shared glance spoke volumes, ensuring that no one faltered alone in the face of hardship. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden hue over the courtyard, the weavers lingered over their meal, savoring the last crumbs. The air grew warmer, carrying the faint rustle of leaves and the distant call of a peacock, its cry a melodic interruption to their tranquility. They spoke in low tones of the previous night's dreams, or the quality of the latest silk threads, their voices blending into a soothing cadence that lulled the mind. Abul Fazl's writings painted such scenes with a touch of reverence, noting how these communities exemplified the emperor's ideal of harmony, where individual skills contributed to a greater whole. Yet woven into this harmony was the mystery of those unwritten pacts, alliances forged in the shadows of necessity and trust. Never committed to paper for fear they might unravel like a poorly knotted thread. One could imagine an elder among them, his dhoti faded from years of wear, recounting tales of bygone days. As the group reclined against the courtyard's stone walls, his words flowed like a gentle stream, describing how their forebears had navigated the empire's vast changes, always returning to the core of their community. The scent of brewing tea, its leaves steeping in a brass pot over the dying embers, added another layer to the scene. The herbal fragrance mingling with the lingering warmth